Good afternoon, everybody. We'll begin the next session now. Are you ready? If you're having conversations about the last session and want to see this session, then hold that conversation. Otherwise, we're going to get started. This is enterprise labeling, how to deploy enterprise labeling. Is that what you want to see? Is that what everyone here wants to see, how to deploy enterprise labeling? All right, good, because that's what we'll cover. This will probably be a little bit more, if you saw the last presentation, this is going to be a little bit more practical discussion about how to deploy an enterprise labeling system and what that means and where it goes and what it does for you. So before we go there, let me introduce myself. I'm Dave Reba. I'm the Director of Consumables Practice here at Barcoding Inc. So we have a business practice at Barcoding Inc. which focuses specifically on labeling and label applications. And so that includes softwares, and it includes the actual labels, and it includes printing. I've been in the business 20 plus years. In fact, I think that when I got in this business, I was one of 10 people in the industry that actually sold barcodes. That's how long I've been in this business. And so I've got a lot of experience behind me, which gives me the opportunity to share that with you when it comes to strategic enterprise labeling. So what we'll take a look at today is what is enterprise labeling, what you can do now, what the future looks like, and what the play for today is. So what you can do now is really a strategic look at what you can do with your organizations to become enterprise labeling compliant. What the future looks like is what is down the road and what we can look forward to that's going on in the labeling business. And then what the play is for today, what you can actually do today to consolidate your labeling program and to wring the costs of the labeling program out of your enterprise. And so the large part, the overlaying part of this presentation is about consolidation. Consolidation is really the number one way to wring costs out of the operation, to be more efficient, to be more accurate, and to be more connected. So what is enterprise labeling? Well, the value proposition is to consolidate the enterprise labeling spend to reduce total cost of operation. It also gives you better quality control, and it also gives you a more consistency throughout your enterprise. So that's really the goal, and there are ways to achieve that, to standardize processes throughout your organization, and standardization and consolidation are really the ways that you begin to wring costs out of your labeling applications throughout the enterprise. So that's the goal and the value proposition that we're trying to achieve. But with everything, it starts with why. Why do we do this? We do this because the label is critically important to your enterprise, right? The label ties your products together, it ties your processes together, and it ties you to your customer as well. So the entire supply chain is predicated on good labeling, efficient labeling, and making sure that when you do the labeling, it's done compliant structure or it's done in a most efficient way for your organization. What we've learned is that, the first one, Enterprise Labeling Survey reports 55% of respondents from companies with revenue of greater than $1 billion are utilizing multiple solutions to meet their labeling requirements. The truth is that what we've learned through the years is that even small organizations fall into the same trap. They have disparate systems throughout the organization, disparate systems, so labeling generation software. And we find that what I have found personally is that in one building, I have found 5 different labeling softwares being used. So you can only imagine that if you're having 5 different labeling softwares being used in one building, what it might look like in an enterprise that might have 2, 3, 10 locations. So those are very disparate systems. And when you're involved with disparate systems, the costs go up because the training goes up, the consistency goes down, the standardization is removed. And so this becomes a real challenge for organizations to manage the cost structure of an enterprise labeling solution when you're using multiple different platforms. So the goal is to get to one platform enterprise-wide, and I've already kind of given you hints on what those benefits are when you do that. So the goals are to reduce the cost, create standardization, consolidate. It even gives you the competitive advantage because you're delivering product faster, smoother, easier than your competitors. And at the end of the day, we're all in it for the same reason, to make customers happy. Customer satisfaction is what makes our companies work. You're the customers to us. We want to make sure you're satisfied, because when you are, we contain long relationships, which allows us to function in harmony and work together more smoothly. And at the end of the day, when you're happy, we're happy, but your customers are also happy. So these are the goals. These are the things we want to try to achieve with enterprise labeling. Best practices can be grouped into 3 categories. Best practices is the process of standardizing and consolidating. It means centralized, standardized, and integration. So an enterprise labeling software package allows you to design labels in compliance formats, so GHS, for example, or GS1, or any number of different compliance challenges your organizations might have. A centralized package can then be distributed throughout the entire organization. So in the example where I said I had a customer that had 5 different packages in one building, we'll change them out to one package, and we'll deliver printing seats to every one of the users. And what that allows them to do is integrate the software to their databases, and so they're now being able to pull data out of the databases to populate the label. The labels are consistent across the entire enterprise because everyone's using the same package to design the label. And not only that, but you can begin to build libraries so that a location in California can pull from a library that somebody in New York may have designed. And so now you're sharing those templates across the entire enterprise. So now you're standardizing, and you're consolidating, and you're creating compliance structure that is in harmony across the entire organization. So these, we identified key drivers as to why these softwares were developed. There's just a few of them we'll go through, but one of the first key drivers as to why this was developed was, I want to print faster. And in the old days, when I started selling barcodes, the want to print faster thing was really obvious because you'd press the print button and it would literally take 4 to 6 seconds to print a label. Today, they're instantaneous. They print right away. But what does slow the process down is when you're trying to populate or build a label in a disparate manner. In other words, you have a desktop label generating software. You're not doing it with support from the organization. And so now you're taking hours to design a label when you already have a library of labels available to you across the entire enterprise. You can grab that library, you can pull from the database or the structures that you need, drop it into the label, press print, and you have instantaneous printing. So I want to print faster was one of the main reasons why we developed these large enterprise software packages for software development or label generation development. I want to reduce errors. So same thing, right? When you develop a standardized process and you start building libraries of forms and formats, you begin to eliminate the errors because all the compliance is built into the forms that were designed. So if somebody designs a form in California and somebody in New York wants to use that, and it's all compliant under the standardized labeling software, everybody is now reducing errors and increasing speed to print. So another one of the key drivers as to why we want to go in this direction. I want everyone to do it the same way, like I've been talking about. The guy in California built and designed the software or the format, and the guy in New York can just grab it out of the database and pull that format down, and everything is consistent. So it really impacts the supply chain because if you're getting a variety of different labels to go through the supply chain, it's slowing down the supply chain. When everything is consistent throughout your organization from the labeling side, the supply chain then picks up, and they're more efficient, and they're more accurate, and they're more connected. So everyone is doing it the same way, everyone's rowing in the same direction, everyone's speaking the same language, everyone's using the same formats. And it's all desktop driven. I want it to be ready for future growth. So they, as the years go by, you see more and more compliance coming out. When I got started in the industry, I think there were 8 barcodes. Now there's more barcodes than I can count on. We went from UPC to EAN to GS1. We now have GHS. We have a lot of different compliance, and compliance is continuing to come out. These softwares are flexible enough for adding new compliance into the label designs so that, once again, when someone in California designs a label, the format goes into the library, it's pushed out to all the users throughout the organization, and everybody's consistent with the same format and the same compliance structure. So I want it to be able to be growth-oriented. And an enterprise labeling software package allows you to do that easily because you're all trained on the same package. Adding updates and upgrades becomes simplified. I want it to be easy, as I was just speaking about. Once you all get trained on the same software, once everybody's rowing in the same direction, speaking the same language, it becomes easy for training. It becomes easy to understand the software. It becomes easy for the enterprise to add new users. It becomes easy for adding new compliance structure. So what we want to do is we want to introduce an enterprise labeling software package which drives the entire organization and get rid of or reduce disparate or many different labeling packages throughout the organization. And so this is a few of the software packages that are in the mainstream AIDC market that all do enterprise labeling. They all do desktop labeling software packages, but in addition to that, they all provide enterprise-wide. So you integrate this into your ERP system, and then multiple users can draw on it, and those multiple users can use your data systems from anywhere in the planet, from any desktop, and be able to use the same structure and same compliance. And this is also easy to share because you can push those new formats out over the internet in today's environment. So it becomes real easy to share, becomes really easy to use, becomes really easy to train, and now the whole organization is working in the same direction to have the same solutions. So these are the variety of different packages that are available. Barcoding Inc. is a value-added provider of these softwares, and we can work with you to help make these come alive in your organizations. So that's the software, enterprise software side of it. Are there any questions on this? A quick case study. Shepherd Manufacturing is a privately held organization. They have about 300 employees. They're in the chemical business. And their challenge was GHS labels. GHS labels are the labels that have the red diamonds on them. And so those are very compliant structured. And so they were struggling with disparate label generation software packages throughout the organization. So they lost all those efficiencies. They didn't have consistency. And so they bought into the enterprise labeling solution set, and it turned their company around. It increased the efficiency. The compliance labels were being created 10% faster, significant growth on that aspect, and they were allowed to make their labels a lot faster with a lot more compliance, with a lot less stress and agony. So this is a real good case study that shows the enterprise labeling package can impact the organization dramatically. Things to keep in mind about enterprise labeling software is that in order to get these guys up and running, it does take collaboration at the office. You've got to have operations managers involved. You have to have the C-suite involved because you are impacting the entire organization. And it takes time to set these things up. So it's a strategic play because it involves an awful lot of the individuals throughout the organization to get this package up and running. But once it's up and running, the benefits are very tangible and very important to the organizations. So that moves to the next segment, which is the future. Managed print services. Managed print services can reduce operating costs from 20 to 30%. So managed print services, in a nutshell, is essentially pay for image print. So when you print an image, you pay. It's a click per image print system. Now this model has been proven in many industries, but not in the AIDC industry. So put it in simple English, it hasn't been introduced for thermal or thermal transfer printing, label printing. Where you find this model currently today is in offices that have copy machines. The copy machine business has been under a managed print service model for many, many years, and it is the significant advantages of saving 20 to 30% that's driving it into our industry. We have multiple major OEM or vendors in the industry developing this package. So there are going to be many of these packages coming out in about 18 to 24 months. So this is going to be a live, futuristic, soon-to-be here program. The concept behind this is comprehensive print strategy. So what that means is under a managed print services platform, you're going to be able to manage the supplies. So for thermal printing, you're going to be able to manage labels and ribbons, for example. You're also going to be able to manage the equipment, so that would be the actual printers. You'll be able to look deeply into the printers. You'll be able to manage parts like print heads. And MPS or cost per image is the way the model works. And you'll also be able to manage services, so break-fix services. So in a nutshell, this is what's happening, right? You're going to print a label, and every time you print a label, the printer is going to click that. And we're going to sit down in advance, and we're going to understand what your model is and what your volumes are and what your requirements are. We're going to put you under a big program that gives us an idea of what your annual usage is. Now, you may get the forecast exactly right, or you may fall under by 5 or over by 5. But for the 90 to 95%, every time you print a label, it'll click and it'll charge you, but you're going to always have labels in stock, you're going to always have ribbons in stock, you're going to always have print heads in stock based on those forecasts, and you're going to also know when a service call is required based on the mileage that those printers are printing. It's all automatic. So the future is we're going to automate the entire process for being able to acquire labels into the organization. We're going to consolidate it, back to that consolidation thing, so that the vendor is managing the inventory. So another way of putting this model is this is vendor managed inventory. All that data is going to come to the vendor via the printers. So for this model to work, you need to have smart printers. And today the smart printers are being introduced everywhere. Every OEM is delivering smart printers. They're either Linux based or they're Android based. And those technologies allow those printers to communicate back to the vendor. And so we're now taking the purchasing structure out of the cost of operation. So another area where costs go down. So this model is based on velocity, it's based on usage, it's based on location, everything that goes into consideration for this model to work. So managed print services is going to involve studying and analyzing your business requirements. The one thing is that when this comes online, it's going to have to go through the hype curve, right? It's going to have to be introduced, and early adopters are going to take it. And then after the early adopters are taken, it's going to climb that hill to get to the peak of performance before it falls into mainstream. So This will be coming out in about 18 to 24 months, as I mentioned, but then you're looking at about another 18 to 24 months before this thing planes out on the hype curve, and the average company will be then able to grab it and start instituting this into their organization. But it's the ultimate way to consolidate the business, the process of purchasing labels and running labels through your organization. So case study, there are no case studies in the AIDC industry because this model doesn't fit in the AIDC industry as of yet. However, there are case studies from the industries where it does work. And they're very compelling, and that's the reason why the market in the AIDC industry, the barcode industry, is driving this. Global financial institution, they were looking to increase their headcount. They were growing. They had a problem with real estate. They were running out of real estate. And so when they sat down to analyze this process, they began to understand that their printing was being a lot of printing in one location, a little bit of printing in another location, and so they consolidated those printings. And as they consolidated all of that, they began to realize they had a lot more real estate available to them than they thought they had. So it really impacted the operation from both the real estate side, from being able to grow and reducing the number of printers in their fleet, and it saved them roughly 35% on their operation. There were other benefits, including waste. When we talk about making labels, there's always a lot of waste. And when we make labels, we have a lot of waste, but that waste always gets transferred back to the user one way, shape, or form in the cost. And so if we can eliminate waste, you're saving a lot of money. But you can see through the benefits here, the results, the managed print services was enormously effective for this organization. So we're going to go there. We're going to be there before you know it. Get ready for it. It's going to be an exciting time for everybody. It's going to be fully automating your label purchasing. So what can we do today? So today, by what I mean by what we can do today is tactical. So as I mentioned about enterprise labeling, it takes a lot of collaboration from the front office, from operations, from almost every aspect of the organization. And it takes time. But what you can do today, what I mean by that is you can actually pull some consolidation together within a couple of weeks and begin to wring cost out of your label acquisitions immediately. So this is the play for today. This is what we can do to save money and to become more efficient, accurate, and connected with your labeling processes. It all starts with analytics, right? So we'll sit down with your organization and we'll do the analytics of what your company does and how you do it and why you do it. We always ask why. But one of the things that we find is that many, if not most organizations, have what we call rogue spending or maverick spending. So, as I mentioned earlier on with enterprise software, I went into the building and they had 5 different software packages in one building. Same holds true here. I went into one building and they had 5 different people purchasing labels from 5 different vendors. Rogue spending. And I know the statement there is a little harsh about you're going against company policy and so forth and so on, but rogue spending is really, I'm going to pick up the phone, I'm going to find someone who can sell me the label, and I'm going to just buy it. So what we've learned is that for companies that have multiple locations, for example, the location in California was buying a 4x6 label from one vendor. The New York location was buying a 4x6 label from another vendor. The Texas location was buying a 4x6 label from another vendor, and they're all paying different prices. And by the way, because you're not taking advantage of economy of scale, they're all paying inflated prices. So your cost structure is pretty fat. And so we can reduce that through consolidation. This process, spend management, why, how, where, what, we'll take a deep dive into your organization. We'll figure out what you're doing, and then we'll begin the process of consolidating the entire spend. And that brings a lot of consistency. We talked about that early on. Standardization. It allows us to reduce cost. It allows us to add a lot of value to the program when you consolidate as well. So how did we hit home with consolidation? I mean, I like this case study because it's a Southwest Airlines case study. And it really tells a story as to what we're after. So everybody is probably familiar with Southwest Airlines. It's one of the most successful, most profitable airlines in the airline industry. And their number one model for making that happen is they use one piece of equipment. They use one vendor. They use Boeing 737. They have one vendor, Boeing. They use one piece of equipment, the 737, which means every engineer is trained on the same equipment, so the training costs go down. The inventory goes down because it's inventory for one piece of equipment. And when all those cost structures go down, it allows them to do value-added services, which is customer satisfaction. Bags fly free, things of that nature. Quick turnarounds on the gates. So because they're doing a consolidation model, the cost structure comes down, the value adds go up. And it makes them more competitive, and it makes the customers more satisfied. It's a great case study on why we consolidate. And it's a real obvious case study because everybody knows Southwest Airlines. This is what we're trying to achieve. So here at Barcoding Inc., we provide supply chain critical labeling solutions. There's some logos on the bottom of the slide. That's my testimonials to let you know that we are doing the consolidation program. We're doing it with some very nice logos. Some of these logos might be here in the room, and we appreciate the business if you are. But you can see that we're doing this at a high level. And it's working very well because these logos continue to grow. Commonality path across your enterprise. Commonality or standardization equals savings. So we like to turn this into what we call plug and play. One vendor who has control of all of your labeling requirements. So now your 4x6 labels that have been being purchased from 4 or 5 different locations, maybe from even the one building, have been consolidated. That allows us to take advantage of economies of scale and bring the cost down per that ticket type for that label type, and starts to wring the cost out. The other thing that it allows us to do is if the volumes are great enough and if the volumes and velocities are great enough, we could put those into what we call inventory packages. And so those inventory packages are basically virtual inventory, which is always available, so that anytime throughout the year you'll never run out of the inventory that you need. It's all done through an analytics of your business, what you need, when you need it, where you need it, and we bring those packages together so that you're cutting the cost, you're cutting time to order, and you're also being very consistent across the entire organization with what's being delivered to your company. So the assessment is, again, to establish what all your business requirements are, and at the bottom line, what we're really trying to provide back to you is a reduction in total cost of ownership, total cost of operations, which is interesting because it all starts with what we do here at Barcoding Inc. Our tagline, one of our taglines is process, people, technology. So when we sit down to do an analytics with you, we're going to first sit down and we're going to take a look at your process. So if we understand your process very well, we can then begin to understand how to leverage the label spend on where you're going to need the inventory, when you're going to need the inventory, what are your hot spots, so where are you printing a lot of labels versus where you might not be printing a lot of labels. We're going to organize all that and get a feel for what your volumes and velocities are. Then we're going to take a look at what your people skills are. So do you have the ability to run some of these programs, or do you not have those abilities? And we're going to adjust processes according to what your skill sets are so that we can take advantage of that as well. So do you have capabilities? And then finally, we're going to add the right technology to the mix. So do you need a thermal transfer? Do you need a thermal direct? Can you use a desktop printer? what technologies is really required after we've taken a look at your process and your people. So it's an entire holistic look at what's going on before we actually deliver a package to you that makes sense to bring the costs out of operations. The other thing that I think people don't think about when they're looking at these programs is that there's a whole lot of different formulations with labels and ribbons. And if you're not using the correct formulations, you're putting a lot of wear and tear on your hardware, on your assets. And so we're going to also make sure that we use certified product for the assets for the printers that you have deployed. And when we do that, it gives us the opportunity to provide a lot of value add to the organization. I'm going to show in the next slide what some of those value adds are. So we're going to also take a look at what your deployment of hardware is. We're going to marry those labels to that deployment of hardware. And then we're going to set up inventory agreement programs so that cost of operations falls, one vendor to work with for the entire enterprise. As I was saying, this is the things that we're going to be looking at when we sit down to analyze what's going on in your operation. And so when looking for vendors, there are some real quality value-added providers in the industry. When you're looking, I highly recommend, of course, you look at us directly. This is our signature value stack. This is the value we bring to the table when you operate with us on doing a consolidated program. And so when evaluating your vendors, I would recommend the very first thing you look for in a vendor is, can you show me your value stack? Can you show me the goodies I'm going to get without having to pay for them? That's the value. This isn't the value of adding one product to another product. This is the value services. So when you work with Barcoding Inc., this is the list of value sets that you get. And you can see it includes free print heads. The cost of a printer is kind of interesting. You can buy a printer for a couple of $1,000s. The print head is $500. You blow 4 print heads out and you're now into buying new printers. We can deliver free print heads. So the cost of operation goes way down. And that's a huge expense because print heads are only valuable for about a million linear inches. So if you print 1,000,000 inches, that print head is shot. And if you get those things free, that's a tremendous savings. But we also do things like free shipping. We do free inventory holding for you. We'll do project consulting. We'll do project management. A whole list. But I can sit down with you and go through with you what our value stack is. And you don't always use every one of these. You might use all of these. You might use some of these. But it's not a list that you check off, I want this, that, or the other thing. These are available to you because you work with Barcoding Inc. So, quick case study, and then we're finished. DHL has been just a wonderful organization to work with. We put them under a consolidation program about 1.5 years ago. And we're bringing them online in an orderly managed approach. To date, we've saved them roughly 25% across their entire enterprise for label acquisition and cost of ownership. They have about 450 locations now, up to about 450 locations across the United States and Canada. And again, we're bringing them online in a managed approach. Currently, we have about 24% of their locations on the program, and it's all consolidation. They're all buying one vendor, all certified material, all free print heads. A large portion of the material they're buying from us gets free shipping, and it's a consistency across the board, and so they have completely satisfied throughput on their labels and their operations with the cost structure being reduced by 25%. There's the hard numbers. And you can see it from line item to line item that for 25% of the operation, for about mid-year this year, we've already projecting a savings of about $250,000 for DHL. And if you extrapolate that out over the rest of the organization, you see that these numbers are very significant and they're deeply tied into this program because the results are real. So this is just a great case study to let you see what's possible. And this program could be set up in a couple of weeks. as opposed to the enterprise labeling software program, which would take more time and effort because it's so enterprise-wide. I can do this from one location. I can do this from multiple locations. So if you have one location that is experiencing rogue spending, we can bring that together. If you have an entire organization, an enterprise as large as DHL, we can consolidate all of that and take advantage of all the economies of scale also. So to kind of bring this all together, the strategic play with the software is the front end. The tactical play with the purchasing of the labels is the back end, and they meet in the middle, and now you've got a harmonized system. Start with the enterprise software package so everything's compliant. All people in the organization are rowing in the same direction with the same language, and then bring in the labeling purchasing process to eliminate rogue spending, get those economies in play, and you've now got an organization that's harmonizing. In the future, when MPS comes out, we'll be able to bring that into the mix as well, and we'll take purchasing out of the equation. It becomes automatic. And so that's really the enterprise labeling program that you can look forward to engaging at your organizations and to begin to pull costs out and become more efficient, accurate, and connected. Are there any questions? Do you want my phone number? There it is. Thanks, everybody, very much.